started. So hello everybody, welcome to the IEP Live Learn Lunch. It's the 48th in our series of Live Learn Lunches. Really excited to have Aptem join us today, and they're going to take us through their 10 things guide. And with no further ado, I'm going to pass you over to them. So Richard, welcome to the IEP Live Learn Lunch, and over to you.
Thank you very much. With a little bit of luck, you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Wonderful. And actually, I have to admit, I can join Maxine. I'm also in Spain right now. So, and I mentioned also, for sometimes the bandwidth can play up a bit, but greetings from Jerez in the south of Spain, which is where I'm
you
doing
lucky
from.
man, Richard. You didn't tell me that beforehand. I'm
Well,
very jealous.
Well, lockdown's taught us one thing: we can work from a lot of different places.
That's very true.
Anyway, look, thank you everyone for taking the time to join today. And it's always difficult when doing one of these sessions. You know, I do wear a commercial hat. You know, I'm CEO of MWS, and we produce Aptem, and yeah, you know, we have a product that we're selling. So of course, in my slides, we mention Aptem in a number of places. But what I'm really going to try and do is talk about, look, this is how we're using technology to solve problems that we think impact participants, impact delivery organizations, you know, that can either negatively or positively impact the outcome of the way a program occurs. So, you know, what can we do with technology? What's possible? And I've been around a little bit. I was here in the sector, you know, when in 2008, 2009, 2009 onwards, and saw, you know, the last iteration of significant growth that we went through. And technology had a much more limited impact then. I think, you know, it was earlier days. There was a general sense that many of the individuals we were supporting were less likely to be tech savvy. So although there was a sort of a bubble of activity that we were part of with technology solutions, I suppose it wasn't truly the mainstream. I think what we're seeing now is that technology is going to be central to how the sector operates. It's going to touch every part of programs. So, you know, the first thing is that the world has changed. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not in the UK right now. I hope to be back soonish, although looking increasingly interesting to see how that's going, you know, the challenges of travel right now. But anyway, the point is, anywhere where there's an internet connection, fundamentally one can operate. And as we've had a year to get used to that, it's been pretty apparent that we, you know, had a lot of time to think about what that might mean for employment services. One profound change is the recognition that the vast majority of job seekers can help themselves. Now, some of you will have seen the podcast that we launched recently, and the first speaker on that was Stephen Timms, who is of the DWP Select Committee on employment, who's chair of that particular Select Committee. And, you know, one of the things discussed on there is, you know, digital access, digital inclusion. And there clearly are quite a number of people who don't have a computer at home, don't have a decent device, don't have a tablet, have to use their phone. And you can do a fair bit on a mobile phone with a modern system such as Aptem. You know, it's fully what's called responsive. It works on a device, but there clearly are limits. But I think, you know, that is the minority. In absolute terms, when one looks at the volume of unemployment, the vast majority, mathematically, of individuals who are going to be job seeking will have access to devices of a sufficient quality that they can be meaningfully used. And if that's the case, then you're opening up the door to self-service. And I think we're going, you know, this is a profound change from, as I say, the last time that programs operated at scale. So I think you're going to see, I say, a lot more happening with job seeker self-service, and not just, because it's mandated or some other sort of requirement, but just fundamentally because it's useful to the individual, especially the more motivated job seeker, to help themselves find a job that suits them in as quick a fashion as possible. We're seeing increased work coach caseloads. So it's, the very large numbers of work coaches are currently being hired at DWP land, and obviously the provider networks as well. Caseloads are going to increase significantly, and therefore how advisors effectively manage their caseload matters. And to me, the most important thing an advisor can do is interact with the participant, help overcome that participant's concerns, give good guidance and direction, recognize when there's a problem, help deal with the inevitable demoralization that can kick in. Those sort of human qualities that an advisor can bring to the interactions are massive. Paperwork, admin, compliance, bookings, tracking, all of the stuff that's necessary in what is essentially a government-funded ecosystem. Let technology do as much of the heavy lifting as possible. So I think, if you're looking at trying to automate as much as possible, go as end to end as is possible.
Hello, everyone. I think we've probably just lost the sound from Richard for a moment. As he said, he is joining us from Spain, so it could be bandwidth. So let me just see what I can do to get him to rejoin us. Yes, I think we've probably had an issue with bandwidth. So just bear with me a moment and we will try and get him back online for you.
I apologize. I lost my connection. Sorry about that.
Not to worry, Richard. We waited for you. That's absolutely fine.
Thank you very much. There are some downsides to technology, and I'm using a microwave connection, or was, for my internet here, because I'm a bit rural where I am. Anyway, I apologize. So essentially, if you take the view that the journey of a job seeker may well involve retraining, there are many other aspects of activity that are going to form part of the service. And the area of training I'm going to cover again in a bit more detail, but what's apparent is certain sectors are absolutely killed by COVID. I mean, there are parts of the economy that will take quite a while to recover. So there are individuals who may be perfectly employable, but there just isn't going to be much in the way of employment opportunity in the particular sectors they came from. And unfortunately, some of those are the staples of the previous recovery in terms of areas where people secured employment. So where you're looking at things like assessment of capability, transferable skills, providing e-learning in skills development. There's a lot more that may form part of a program, and technology can be part of that. Personalization matters massively. We are used to personalization everywhere. Whether it is going to Netflix and making suggestions based upon our previous viewing habits, or whether it is so social media, understanding what sort of topics interest you and providing more of that, or just TikTok, finding new videos that you're likely to find amusing. The bottom line is that understanding the individual what he or she needs, and personalizing solutions are going to be, again, an increasing, that technology is around. We should be using it in our space. So how you personalize the program to the individual and let the technology use the analytics to appreciate what's possible and will be beneficial, again, is going to be something not necessarily in July when restart happens, but as the data starts to accumulate, then the solutions, the technology solutions that are in place will be using this data to then probably by early 2022 to be starting to really do some clever stuff using data based on what is known to work and what is not so good at working. Speed is going to be a big difference. Again, you know, a lot of these sort of shifting paperwork around type of activity is going to go out the window. Things like using chatbots, using artificial intelligence, you know, honing in on what's working very quickly and moving from step to step as fast as is possible with a particular individual, again, is going to be a factor, because technology can do this really well. It can do this at scale in a way that people don't do so well. The idea of tracking client progress and you know, trying to personalize the support around that individual's needs. Now, one of the challenges for our sector is going to be the huge numbers of people who are being hired right now to provide support as work coaches, because they're inexperienced by definition. More than that, some will be good and some won't be so good. It's going to be the luck of the draw to a large extent for participants as to whether they get one of the better coaches or one of the less good ones. Data will really start to inform decision making and service improvement. It will help personalize and make recommendations that are more likely to be effective for individuals. It will also be of benefit in terms of a provider to better understand their own colleagues, who's working well, who isn't, you know, where is more support required. So this whole area of, you know, in a way that has just not occurred in our space, of understanding data, what the data is telling us about how our program's going along. Machine learning is one of those areas which is much hackneyed. You know, it's everything from, I don't know, Terminator to route planning for, you know, when the Amazon delivery vehicle, you know, when they decide which order sequence deliveries are going to be made in a day. But, you know, if there is a lot of, for example, one of the things we are going to be launching this year, which I think is so cool, is we know from a CV what a person's job, what jobs a person may have done. We know what skills they may have put on that CV, but we can also infer skills that may be missing that they haven't thought they to put on because they hadn't realized that those skills, they probably possess those skills, or those are skills worth mentioning, or just they didn't think to. And we can know this from job adverts which list similar roles and the sorts of skills they have, and we can look at job applications and the sorts of skills that individuals typically speak about when applying for that job. So we can immediately reveal the difference, the potentially missing items. We can see what jobs a person is looking for, and we can see whether they're likely to get those jobs, and we can see whether there are any skills gaps that could quite readily be matched. You know, sorry, the skills gaps could be handled in order to sort of addressed in order to enable that individual to get a job. Or maybe the skills gaps are so large, it's probably unrealistic for the individual to be going for that job. We can see what jobs a person's looking for and suggest other jobs they may not, that have similar skills requirements, but maybe quite different, but actually use the same underlying skills. I mean, interestingly, even in our sector, you may have sort of seen a report we commissioned with the IEP and MZ looking at how you hire work coaches. And the issue there was well, there clearly aren't enough experienced work coaches out there. By definition, we haven't, the sector's growing. So we looked at what those skills are that are going to become being effective as a work coach, and then what other types of jobs include those same skills. So which different pond as such should one be fishing in order to try and hire people into our sector? Well, in the same way, we can help the individual understand what other jobs could he or she be going for based upon the skills that that person probably has. Now, these are some very clever areas of really throwing up more opportunity that we can do using technology, just automate it each and every day really quickly. So it just happens for individuals. Nudging is something that, again, is an area where there is a lot of potential. A nudge at its most basic level starts with, you've got an appointment on Friday. Well, I've forgotten about that. Well, this will remind you. Don't forget to prepare your interview. You got an interview on Friday, so maybe the system can say, do your research on that organization a couple of days beforehand. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Not 5 minutes before you leave for the interview, but a couple of days before. You could be nudged to do that. Or maybe you covered something in some e-learning you addressed, and maybe there's some follow-up activities you could be doing. So nudges can start from sort of relatively basic task reminders to quite clever contextual suggestions, to actually, again, getting very powerful based on behavioral science to say, what is the maximum chance of, do we find that a nudge at this time of the day, or a nudge with WhatsApp, or a nudge with, an SMS achieves better results at a particular time of day for particular activities? So this is a combination of hunch about what might work well, which is then tested and then turns into an informed rule once you know what seems to work or doesn't work. And then it can just be automated. It just happens. So you can start to all the time shove the needle, increase the percentage likelihood of getting positive outcomes by not leaving no step, but by doing more of the things that work and fewer of the things that don't work. So, and nudging is, again, very powerful, very easy, and something that you can get better and better, get to function better and better. E-learning is something that, people can learn stuff remotely. A lot of people prefer to learn stuff remotely, at your own time, in your own convenience. No need to travel. It's one of the original areas where sort of YouTube was so transformational, where, well, how do I change a plug? Well, I don't know. Go on YouTube and search how to change a plug, and you'll find a video showing you how to change a plug. We routinely expect to find videos and e-learning, short bite-sized topics on particular bite-sized assets on particular topics that help us learn better. Well, in the same way, as a job seeker, I've got an interview coming up. What do I need to think about? Oh, I'm working on my CV. What should go in it? Oh, I've been offered a job. Where, should I just accept it? Things to think about. I'm feeling really demoralized. Little ideas that can help you. The point is, e-learning can be a really good way of helping a large number of people and letting those individuals take in that help at times to suit them. And then, of course, there's also e-learning on all sorts of vocational arenas. I mean, I worked in hospitality. I don't think my next job is going to be in hospitality. So maybe I can do a short course to take my great skills in, people interactions, my great skills, my client focus, but turn that into something that's useful in a different sector that is more buoyant than, say, the hospitality sector. So the whole area of updating your skills and doing it through e-learning. And if you take the view that you've got 100 people and 60 of them can effectively use e-learning, well, if you previously were going to do a lot of provisions through workshops, let's just assume that travel is possible again and whatever. Well, if before you were taking 100 people into a physical environment and trying to interact with them to provide training and support, if you can get 60 of them to now undertake activity in a self-service model with high quality learning, then that means you're only having to focus your resources on 40, and maybe 20 of those 40 can be assisted so they can self-service. By the way, I don't know if there are questions as we go through this. If there are any comments, observations, I think we're opening it up to the floor in a moment. Please feel free to feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll be picking up on that afterwards in the conversation. Also, you know, in terms of data, there are other things. I mean, I think one of the people on this call, I think I spotted Devon's name earlier, Devon over at Policy and Practice, where you're looking at, you know, using data on, well, if I get this job, how's it going to affect my benefit? You know, how can I do this sort of, you know, these kind of what if scenarios that could inform decision making? Again, all of those things can be brought to one place to help the individual make intelligent, pragmatic decisions for themselves. Anyway, so e-learning, I mentioned. Diversity and inclusion is another area where there's often technology seen as being, you know, comes in for criticism. And, you know, I'm not saying everything is perfect about the world of technology and it handles all things in all respects, but it does strike me that the many areas that I mentioned earlier can be as helpful in providing access. So, for example, individuals who may be reluctant to participate in certain environments can access technology in the privacy and comfort and security of their own space, as opposed to, say, having to go to workshops, or where you're looking at someone who, because they got caring or other such responsibilities, finds that they can only access the service at certain times of the day that make sense for them. Or you've got people who don't particularly, you know, they prefer, you know, their social skills as such, or their preference in terms of communication style means that they're very happy interacting with technology to absorb advice, guidance. You've got a whole bunch of areas where people might actively prefer the technology solution. You've got areas where people will be scared of the technology solution. And I see that as the most brilliant opportunity. Because if someone is scared of the technology, then that's indicating that they're scared of using a tool that is hard to find a work environment where technology is absent. If you can't handle technology, if you're worried about technology, then so many employment domains are going to be closed to you. But if you start using a platform to help with your employment journey, it won't take very long before it becomes not nearly so frightening, actually really quite useful. And your ability to sort of engage with digital technology by dint of using that to help with your job search has suddenly gone up. So you're more than killing two birds with one stone. It's a tremendous byproduct of using technology for assistance. It crystallizes an issue if a person is using it, and then it helps solve it. And I suppose one of the issues, as you mentioned, is if a person is using it, is with technology, the coach knows what participants are doing and what they're not doing. The coach can see if a participant is engaging or not. So the coach can know to provide additional support if clearly there's an issue with the technology for a particular participant. You're not blind when you are using this as part of your delivery model. It's obvious where there are issues with engagement and therefore where something needs to be done. Look, I've rocketed through, because the last time we did this, there was a whole load of conversation in the group. You know, people had observations, some people positive, some people negative, you know, just thoughts on how they saw technology and its impact. And I hope we have time today, to throw it open. I mean, you're getting the view of me. I'm inherently a pro-technology, technology-oriented individual, and I see a lot through that prism. So you'll get that sort of opinion and view from me about why technology can be beneficial. What I hope is, there may be other views in this group today, and it'll be interesting to see, how that is. So with that in mind, let me open up. I don't know. I can't see if there are any questions yet. I don't know if there are any observations. Anyone wants to come in, or let me hand to Helen. And
hello. Hi, it's Helen. Hi, Richard. We've just had a question come in, actually. Richard has said, Richard Hughes, you're not talking to yourself, don't worry about that. Richard has said, with the Aptem Google Play app, I only have contacts appear, whereas if I use the browser and log into Aptem website, I have all available options. Is the Aptem app being currently developed on mobiles?
So I'm going to say yes and no. The Aptem is what's called now is a progressive web app. The app we have in the Google's the Apple Store, Google, or the Google's store, is essentially purely for messaging. That's why I'm surprised by the contacts. It's there to use the power of an app to say, hello, something's new is here. You click the link in it, and it then takes you into Aptem itself via the browser of the device. So actually, most of what you're doing is done within a browser on your phone or on your tablet or on your computer. Because our interface is what's called a progressive web app, it's got app-like characteristics, but it is actually a web page. And it's that and the only purpose of the app at this stage is to provide the nudges because an app itself, a web page, can't notify you. It can't be proactive and say, hello, you've got something new to do. It doesn't have permission to do that, whereas an app on a device can do that. So the app has a very limited functionality, which is that nudge. Okay. Provide a link, and then you do what you do on a web browser within your device itself.
Excellent. And Richard has said, great, thank you for that. And that's quite interesting, actually, because it leads on to a question around nudges and the idea of nudges, which is fantastic. And it's always something that's really interesting for everyone. Are you finding some nudges more successful than others? You were mentioning it earlier that there's different types of nudges can be used and monitored. Do you have any sort of stats on what you're finding more successful at the moment?
Not yet. And look, the reason is we're dealing with a very different cohort of users now. So if you think about it, so just a bit of history about MWS and Aptem. We were very busy in 2009, 2010, 2011, very busy with a solution that was in play then within the capabilities of the platform at that point. We then, as the sector shrank, because it's brilliant for us as Great Britain, unemployment went down. As unemployment went down, our sector shrank significantly, and we as an organization got very busy in vocational training. So the sort of individual we were assisting was doing a apprenticeship or adult education budget or something like that. We are only now, just for the first time, and then you had things like the work and health program. The individual being helped in the work and health program, almost by definition, had very significant barriers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been on that program. We weren't especially involved. We had a handful of clients in that space. And really engaging with technology wasn't really the important thing for a participant. The barriers were such, it rarely was that thing. We are now, for the first time, so Aptem is in use in JETS. It's also used, anyone enrolled on the job finding support scheme that the government launched at the beginning of January, is Aptem that's powering that. So anyone who's using that, those individuals are largely going to be recently unemployed. And those individuals will have a different mindset from people on work and health, largely. Levels of demoralization are unlikely to have kicked in yet. They may well, but not yet. So we are now capturing the data on a very different type of cohort. which is why I said a lot of this is going to be about 2022. It's going to be about the data being captured now and analyzed now that informs what we do in 2022, because we're learning about the nature of job seekers now, because they're different on the whole, a very different population from that which was being supported by the sector pre-COVID.
Excellent. So it's going to be a moving picture, and one that we can keep looking at the data. Fantastic. 100%. So we've had brilliant. So we've had a question from Liz. Hello, Liz. And she's asked around how can we promote digital engagement to funders, and she's given us a little bit of background on the question. In that they have found, and that's at Bellina Grow, they have found that digital engagement has been a real boon, an expansion of the use as people do more online, etc., home education. So how can we really harness that for future opportunities?
I hope we're seeing a transformation in funders' attitude and appetite. You know, the DWP have changed to some extent. You know, they very much are looking for a digital solution. But there always is this, yes, but, you know, one arm tied behind your back. And is, you know, for example, you know, it works for us as an organization. We're of a certain size. We have, you know, we do security properly. We do, you know, we've got lots of people who could do these sorts of things and, you know, and tick the boxes that people like the DWP require us to tick. But what we're not getting is too much in the way of small organization innovation, because it's quite hard for them to get in the ecosystem. It's quite hard for them to get into the big primes and be part of their delivery model. It's quite hard for them to be signed off as a solution. It falls into the, unless this is absolutely core, is this going to fall into the, you know, it's more trouble than it's worth in terms of trying to make it happen. So in answer to your question, I'd say there are two areas. There's DWP and their evolving appetite for seeing how innovative technology can make a difference. I hope it will grow. And sometimes that involves taking the odd risk, and sometimes that involves things going wrong. There's not a big appetite for that. But that if you don't have that appetite, you know, this sort of, I've got a great idea and I'm going to spend 100,000 building a solution, that market, you know, where we operate is MWS, it's in the millions of pounds. And that's a bit of a barrier to the startup. Then you've got the smaller funders and devolution. You have some issues. I mean, you know, if you look at what's permitted in what places like Wales, for example, it is very constrained by the funder, where you've got, you know, so as I say, some of the more local procurement, the design of a program can be quite prescriptive and oriented around a model that doesn't always take technology in mind. And that was a long answer to a short question, for which I apologize. But I think it's about the funders themselves appreciating the benefits of technology and being willing to try some things rather than the alternative, which unfortunately has often been the case.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, Richard. We've had another question. Hi, Richard. This is from Michelle. Hi, Richard. Can the programs be used to predict future growth in various sectors? Well, there's some leading indicators. I mean, we know what the number of job adverts are. So we have just about every job advert in the country in our database. So every day we what's called spider all the job boards, grab the job listings and then make them searchable for our job seekers. In doing so, we also can see, you know, how many new vacancies were there, where are they, and in what sort of roles. So that's probably the best leading indicator. You know, economists may have a sense as to particular sectors they see might, you know, oh, we think there's going to be loads more in renewables, most of funding for renewables, therefore people who can do solar energy installations there'll be a big need. That's going to be driven more by, you know, economics and funding and sort of leading indicators of that. We are perhaps more of a 3 to 4 month early indicator, because you suddenly just see there's more jobs being advertised in this space. That's probably an indication of recovery and growth. I think that's probably the best that we're going to be able to
do in terms of forecasting, we might know a little bit more about who's got a job, and a lot more people seem to be getting jobs with these sorts of skills. That might be a bit of an indicator. But really, there are people at EMSI who do a lot of labour market information research, and I think that's probably a good place to go if you want to start saying, I need to, if someone's if someone's previous home is closed, what's a new one going to be? What's the new one area?
And it's funny you should say that. It's like you've looked at our schedule, Richard, because we have EMSI here, and there's going to be some new regional reports of labour market information that EMSI, as part of the IEP Talent Academy, have put together. And I believe the reports are being launched on Monday, but on the 24th of February, we'll be having a live learn lunch where we look at those regional reports. So for everyone who's interested in looking at more detail as to what's happening in the labour market at the moment, join us for that one. So thank you for that lead in for there, Richard. Thank you. Cheryl's got a question for you, Richard. Advisors on Work and Health Programme or JETS use different information management systems. Will Aptem employees speak with these systems, or will advisors need to duplicate work?
In theory, so for example, we're live with CTEC on JETS. So we use, or CTEC use an API. An API, sorry, it's a three-letter acronym, awful thing. Application Program Interface. It's the electronic bridge between two states technology platforms that allow systems to talk to each other. So using APIs, you can exchange information. That's increasingly done. In, again, the DWP world, it's a little bit more difficult simply because of system security. And it's impossible with DWP. So DWP still don't have the mechanism whereby organizations like us can feed from or feed into, their system. So PrAP referrals are still pretty, basic in terms of how they come in. In theory, a lot more data exchange should be possible. Of course, there are some practical issues about, definitely identifying it. Is that John Smith, the same John Smith as the John Smith in your database? Because the last thing you want to do is create a connection and then find out that you're revealing information about someone else to one person. So these things do have a few challenges, but broadly it's doable if there's an appetite to do it between the provider.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. And Michelle said thank you for the answer to the previous question. Excellent. Those are all the questions I've got at the moment, but I wanted to give everyone a last chance because I know we're a big group today, so sometimes questions can get lost. So if anyone's got a question, if you'd like to sort of ask your question verbally, maybe rather than type in, I know some people like me will have longer questions and they won't want to type them. So if you did want to raise your hands and ask Richard a question before we finish today's session, we do have enough time for one or two more questions, if anyone has any. Cheryl says thank you very much for that answer.
Pleasure.
Excellent. Good. They're all being shy now, Richard, which doesn't happen with this group very often. honestly. So I've not got any more coming at the moment. So that's great. Thank you.
No, thank you for everyone for giving, it's always lovely to have the opportunity. And also, I hope that with the IEP, especially, getting feedback from advisors, coaches as to what's working, what isn't working, where you see things would be helpful is really valuable to us. It's not just what we see in our sort of version of, well, this is what cool technology should look like. We can write this stuff. Well, we know how to build technology, but solving the problems of that you're finding in supporting participants and solving the problems that you're having, in running programs, understanding what are your true pain points. Those are things that that we do very well in conjunction with, and hearing other people's thoughts. So please, whether on events like today or more generally, be communicative.
Do, yeah, and I will chase people. And as you know, Richard, we always share the link to the YouTube recording after the session. So I'll remind everyone when we send that out to do just that. We've had another question in the meantime. So can it's just moved off my screen as I started to read it. That's always the way, isn't it? So just give me one moment and I'll have it in front of me. So it was around, I'm trying to find it now, it was around, will the DWP accept the work on Aptem Employ to evidence job search?
They always have. And in
Okay.
fact, ours is more, an individual can get quite creative with their own records in a way that doesn't from a system generated record. In the past, when the DWP had universal job match, we used to automatically, if someone wanted, only if they wanted it, we used to automatically write into universal job match the record of activities of an individual, and we never had any problems with that being considered problematic. Unfortunately, with universal credit and two-factor authentication, one can't do that anymore, but we can certainly output the record that the individual can then input, and we've never ever had a problem where someone's got in trouble because they were perceived as being insufficiently active based on the data we were generating. So when I say we, Aptem, but frankly any decent system should do that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. That's a great thing to know. So we've had a couple of people ask if we will be, oh, perfect, Cheryl says, thank you. We've had a couple of people ask if we will be sharing the PowerPoint slides. And just to let everyone know, we don't generally share the slides post-session, but what we do share is the recording. So I will make sure that everyone that's attended today receives the link to the recording when it's shared via the YouTube channel. And I believe we'll also be sharing the recording today via some social media later, won't we, Richard? So it's going to be out there for everyone to share. So do look out for that. And we'll make sure we've got this information for you. And I hope I'm crossing my fingers as I say this because I'm putting Richard on the spot. I hope at some point you'll be joining us for another live lunch.
With pleasure, and I hope if I can go a tiny plug.
Yeah,
we're doing a podcast series on employability areas. I mentioned at the beginning. So Stephen Timms was on our first one. We've got Elizabeth from Ursa speaking on one. We've got Sean Williams over at sort of Decker Working Ventures. We've got a whole bunch of interesting people from the sector. We've got coaches who, people who actually do the job at the coalface. It's going to be on all the normal places, Spotify, etc. If you look on LinkedIn, Aptem's in LinkedIn, you'll see we're promoting the first one. But
oh, fantastic!
There's not too much good stuff. I mean, you do at IEP do some great stuff, like these learning lunches. But the purpose of these podcasts, it's not at all product focused. It's just about employability and ways in which informed people see issues and solutions in our space.
Fantastic. So I'll have to volunteer some of our IEP fellows and maybe Scott for one of those podcasts. We'll pick that up at another time. It's recorded now as well, isn't it? So they'll have to do it. That'd be fantastic. That sounds great. If you send that through to me, Richard, I will make sure that's included in the email that we send out to everyone who's joined us today. So really happy to do that. So I haven't had any more questions in. So I'd just like to say one more time, thank you very much for joining us today. And that's to you, Richard. To T, who helped organise this today, and especially to everyone who's attended. The IEP Live Learn Lunch wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for you all that join us every Wednesday lunchtime to learn something about employability and to share your knowledge and experience as well. So thank you. Just going back to what I said earlier about some of the upcoming sessions, because they sort of link into some of the things we've discussed today. Next Wednesday on the IEP Live Learn Lunch, we have the IEP Talent Academy joining us, and it's going to be a 9 top tips for digital interviews. The Talent Academy are going to be doing a series of sessions for advisors around supporting digital job search and supporting advisors with some of these activities that they need to do. So they're going to be coming to share their expertise on that with us. So I'm really looking forward to that. The following week on the 17th of February, Autism Plus will be coming to join us to share some of their expertise on supporting job seekers with autism. And then the following week on the 24th, as I mentioned earlier, EMSI will be joining us to look at those regional reports in more detail and help us to understand where we can go for effective labour market information that's practical and can be used by advisors in order to best support their customers in this in this really unusual time for our sector, and for supporting employability practice in general. So that's what we've got coming up over the next few weeks. I hope to see as many of you on those next sessions. Thank you again to absolutely everyone, and take care and stay safe over the next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.